Hello. I don't know if you can hear me or not. Welcome, whoever you are. I wish I could see who is on the call or on this live stream. If you're here, make a comment if you don't mind so I can see who's here and if you can hear me. That would be super helpful. Usually I do live videos with myself just talking. So this is a little different, trying to screen share. Oh, hey, can you hear me, Mel? And can you see my screen? Oh, perfect. Hey, I did it. That's awesome. All right. So I guess I will get started. I got a lot to cover today. Um, Toxin-free baking and why we should mill our flour fresh at home. Um, I guess I should silence that too. Oh boy. Now, can I change my slides from here? No. How do I do that? Well, we have a problem. I don't know how to get to my slideshow. So, there we go. Okay, here we go. Let's see if this works. All right. So, my name's Dr. Carr. I have been eliminating toxins from my life for the last 2 decades, since I was in my early 20s. I felt like crap, I looked like crap. What I mean by that is my acne was just so bad, so itchy, so deep. That my dad was like, I'll pay if you go to the dermatologist. Nothing I was doing was working, and I was tired all the time. I slept as much as possible, and I just had no energy. I remember people thinking that I was lazy, but really I was just exhausted most of my life. And, things got worse. I've got 3 kids. My second oldest definitely came into this world swinging, and we have been learning a lot through her. That's really where things started. So when she started to go to preschool, she started getting really sick. She had a rash on her jaw, and she was tired all the time. So tired that she couldn't play with her friends. She would lay down outside. Her belly would hurt, her bones would hurt. Um, and then eventually, her teeth became a problem. And it was the teeth right behind where she had a spot on her jaw. Long story short, they thought she had cancer. There was a lytic lesion in her mandible, which is the lower jawbone. And so they did biopsies and said they didn't know what it was, but her bone should grow back in about 6 months. And we've repeated this cycle for about 2 years until the right people came into my life asking the right questions. And we learned that all the dots were connected by petroleum. And I know that this talk is not on petroleum, but it is where we started. So that was the beginning of my journey, was trying to eliminate whatever toxins could have contributed to her sickness. And we sure would have saved a lot of time had we started with removing all the plastics from our life. Many people thought I was crazy, and as a mother, no mom says, I want to make my life more difficult just because that would be fun. Right? We don't do that. Um, Good evening, Barb. Thank you for joining. we don't do that. We try to do the best for our children that we can, and so I see all these parents who are cutting out their gluten and their dairy and soy and all a million different things, right? Because they just want their kids to feel good and maybe themselves, right? Um, so long story short, we started there with Victoria, and so we did gluten free for many years while I was going through chiropractic school. It was very popular, like 15 years ago when I was in school, and and I thought, oh, the gluten, it could be the problem. So I bought whatever grains that I could find on sale, and I ground them up in my Vitamix into flour. I couldn't afford to buy gluten-free flour blends back then. You think they're expensive now? Try 15 years ago. They were practically unheard of, and they were really pricey. Um, so I bought, like I said, the cheapest whatever grains were on sale, and I blended them into flour in my blender, and that's just what I knew to do. So some of the food was great, some of the food was not so great, um, but she started to heal, and she's alive and well, 21. So we succeeded, woohoo! Um, it's telling me I need to change my frame rate, but I don't know how to do that. I hope I don't ruin it by clicking this button. Keyframe. I don't know how to do that. I'm sorry. Anyway, fast forward, and I have a 6-year-old little boy, Eli. He has had eczema since the day he was born. His eczema got worse the more food we introduced into his diet. Um, we did baby-led weaning. I source most of my food, so 20 years of eliminating different toxins. I have eliminated refined sugars, pretty much all eliminated, for the last 12 years. So there's a lot that I don't do that most people would. And so it was very frustrating to learn that he was allergic to pretty much everything. Dairy, gluten. Well, they didn't say gluten, they said wheat. Soy, peanuts, egg. So even if we wanted to go gluten-free, any gluten-free stuff had egg or soy or dairy in it. And at one point I made the bread with aquafaba. It was just a nightmare. And then I discovered einkorn wheat. Now I don't know if any of you have heard of einkorn before. If you have, feel free to share with me in the comments. Anyway, einkorn is ancient wheat. It is known as the oldest wheat available. There are other ancient grains other than einkorn, such as Khorasan, which is the predecessor to durum wheat, your millet, barley, rye, spelt. They are all considered ancient grains. Einkorn, however, seemed to be different, and so I bought my einkorn flour from Jovial Foods and made some bread, and Eli was able to tolerate it, which was great. And really funny, because he shouldn't have been able to tolerate it if he was truly allergic, right? Yet he was. And then another funny thing happened, and this is what I mean in the slide by the whirlwind. One day I couldn't get this einkorn wheat anymore. And so I was like, all right, well, I'll do like I did back when I did things with Victoria. I'm just going to buy the einkorn wheat berries and I'll blend them up into a flour in my blender. No big deal, it's just one extra step. And so I did. And this miraculous thing happened in that he started healing. His eczema was going away. Now, removing all the foods from his diet, covering our floors and foam tiles because we have carpets, and dogs, cats, and dust were also his top allergies. Um, they didn't make his eczema go away. All the creams and other stuff, they didn't make his eczema go away. It might have calmed his itching a little bit, but it didn't fix anything. Okay? So I started to wonder, why is me milling this up in the blender making such a big difference? It doesn't make any sense. And that's how we ended up here. Okay. All right. So, the importance of toxin-free baking. All right. Our bodies are built on what we eat. We break our food down. It all starts in the mouth, right? The enzymes in our mouth are going to break down the starches. Our stomach is going to start to break down those proteins. And our body is going to put all these things back together in whatever form we need to make our body work, right? It's kind of miraculous. It's just so amazing. And so it's very important that whatever food we put into our body is made up of these high quality nutrients, okay? Vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, carbohydrates. We need carbs, we need fat, we need protein. I don't want to hear that one of them is bad. That is not good science. Just gonna say it. All right, so why we need toxin-free baking is because chemicals disrupt these processes of breaking down the food and rebuilding into the different tissues that we need, okay? And it creates what we call dis-ease in the body, our body not functioning the way that we would need. I'm just gonna pop back over and check every once in a while to see if you guys have any questions or whatever, although I will take questions at the end if you like. All right, moving on. So why wouldn't we want to eat refined flour or flour we get at the store, okay? Well, the reasons are so many. Bleaching agents like benzoyl peroxide, chlorine dioxide, preservatives, our BHA and BHT. By the way, they are petroleum derived, and petroleum should not be in our food. It's not a food. The end. Full stop right there. Okay? And so many of these things that are put into our food are petrol-based, like your artificial colors. Right? Some artificial flavors may have petrol in them. Your pesticide residue from desiccation or drying of the crops. We already talked about benzoyl peroxide as a bleaching agent, but they will, I have that twice, I'm sorry. Heavy metals. Now, heavy metals, I'm going to cover this just real quick here. I see a lot of fear over heavy metals, and I get it. They're not great, but they are part of our Earth's crust. And in trace amounts, no harm, no foul, our body's going to be able to handle that. But the problem, like for example with lead, right, is the addition of it. Like, we don't want toys with lead in it. We don't want paint on our walls that our kids might touch or eat. We don't want to be exposed to it extra in our environment. But there are certain natural sources of heavy metals from the crust, or from the Earth's crust, I'm sorry, and they go up into our foods. That's normal. It's okay. We can't control that. Not really. I mean, unless you grow your own food. And even then, are you testing your soil to see if it doesn't have heavy metals? Like, where do we draw the line here? I draw the line in that part I am not really concerned on. Okay. Bromination. Now, the FDA just passed where BVO, or brominated vegetable oil, is not allowed in our food products anymore. And I've seen people going, yay, we can have bread now. Wrong. Bread is not brominated with BVO. It's brominated with potassium bromate. and that was not banned. So just to be clear. Um, why wouldn't we want bromination of our flour? Well, there's a lot of research that supports that it may be a carcinogen, can affect the kidneys, autoimmune conditions. So how many people do we know who have Hashimoto's and other autoimmune conditions today? Because I can tell you that it's a very large number of people. Okay. So, why aren't all these ingredients listed? Why do we think that these chemicals aren't in our refined flour products? Well, the answer is loopholes. So, processing aids are used in production, and they would result in small amounts of these things being found in your bread. So, you have your potassium bromate, your azodicarbamide, and some other bleaching agents. They don't have to list them because, well, small amounts. Okay. Incidental additives like pesticides, fumigants, like for killing bugs and stuff. And any chemicals that they might use during storage or for transportation. They're not intended to be a part of the final product, right, your flour, but they may be present in small amounts, so they don't have to list them. Doesn't mean you're not getting them. And then we have the grass, or the generally recognized as safe category. And I know Mel has covered a few things that are considered generally recognized as safe that really aren't safe. So I'm listing them here. Your enzymes, preservatives, and fortifying agents do not have to be listed in certain situations. And then you have your residual solvents. This is more so related to your processing of oils. But we're talking about baking, and so I thought it would be very important to add this. The hexane, right? So why don't we want our sunflower oil and vegetable oil other than what they're made from? Well, the hexane, this is why. So if you're going to buy your oils, you want to go for the cold pressed. You don't want a product that has been processed with the hexane. Chances are you're getting it in your food and they don't have to list it. So you don't even know. Whew. I'm all fired up today. Okay. Yeah, the grass list, yeah, it really irritates me just how crazy it is. Like, we wonder why we have such a large toxic load. And then you look at stuff like this and you go, oh, we have no idea how toxic we are, how many chemicals we're actually ingesting because they don't have to list it. It's crazy. All right, and finally, anti-caking agents like silicon dioxide and calcium silicate. I don't think you ever seen those in a bag of flour or in your flour products. And that's because they're used to prevent clumping, and they're not required to label it so long as it's under a certain amount. All right, let's see here. There is more, but I thought these deserved their own slide. We have our artificial nutrients. We're going to call these the synthetic vitamins, and you'll see this advertised as enriched flour, like it's a special thing, and they're giving you some great amount of nutrition that you wouldn't be getting otherwise. And that is a myth. That's a huge myth. So first of all, when they process the flour that you're getting at the store, they remove the outer parts of the grain called the germ and the bran and the germ. And so what we're left with is the endosperm, or basically the starch part. The problem is that the bran and the germ are powerhouses of nutrients. They have essential fatty acids, all your B vitamins, your iron, all these things listed on this slide here, but naturally. So I'm not going to go into all the history. Sue Becker does a really good job if you're interested in checking that out. She has a Staff of Life video. It's excellent. I highly recommend finding her on YouTube and listening to it. But what this slide here is showing you is that they don't need to list whether these vitamins are synthetic or food-based. And the majority of them are actually synthetic. And this can be a problem for many people, but especially people who have the MTHFR gene mutation. Okay? Several people in my family have this gene mutation, and it makes detoxing harder. The more this builds up in your body, it's kind of like a poison. And so they start to have more and more problems as they get older, thanks to their inability to methylate these synthetic vitamins. Now, that is not the full picture by any means of MTHFR. That should be a whole separate talk, and I don't want to be the person to give it. But people with the MTHFR gene mutation shouldn't be eating these bread products or anything that says enriched with folic acid and some of the other B vitamins. So you'll see here that I have like B6 and iron. These are the synthetic versions that are listed under here, not the food-based ones. Okay, I just thought that might be helpful for you. All right, so what they need to do is just label something like contains folic acid or folate or iron, and they don't have to tell you if it's natural or synthetic. And they don't have to tell you the specific chemical form they're using. To me, that's a problem. Okay? Now we're going to talk about the health impacts of refined flour. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the term the Four Horsemen. Okay? But they're basically the biggest health conditions. And I'm going to just say in the United States because that's where I'm at. And we're talking about our cardiovascular disease, diabetes, probably cancer, and what's the other one? I would add autoimmune conditions, but I can't remember what the fourth one is. Probably Alzheimer's or dementia, another big one. Okay? The health impacts of refined flour are tied to all of these. And we want to label gluten as the bad guy, but I want to give you some perspective on this. Flour has been refined for over 100 years. Most of the people who have done studies on wheat, they're doing studies on the refined flour, not freshly milled whole grain flour. Okay? They may be doing some studies specifically using vital wheat gluten, not the whole food of freshly milled whole grain flour. Okay? All the doctors that are out there talking about how gluten is bad and it causes inflammation and grain brain and wheat belly and all that, they're not. I'm trying to put this delicately, but they're not referring to fresh milled whole grain flour. They're referring to the refined flour that they've known and we've known for the last 100 years. All the research has been based on the flour that's been available for the last 100 years. Pretty much everybody's lifetime. Okay? So you need to remember that the next time you're looking at an article that talks about gluten or wheat as bad. understand that it's completely different than what we're talking about with this fresh milled whole grain flour. Okay? So we have inflammation. I have seen nothing but reports of less arthritis for my inflammatory arthritis patients. I didn't add that over 75% of my practice now mill their own flour. It may be closer to 80 or 90%. It's not something I keep track of officially. And so I can tell you what types of things that I am seeing, even in people who are sensitive to wheat or gluten, who may have been gluten free or even grain free for a very long time. Switching to the fresh milled flour, they are surprised and excited time and time again that not only are they able to have these flour based foods again, but that they're increasing their energy and their inflammation is going down. All their digestive system problems are starting to resolve. Cardiovascular conditions, this one I see all the time. Do you know how many people come in and you could tell that like their blood pressure's high? They have that beet red face, like all their blood's pooling in their head. When they start eating the fresh milled flour, they start to come in, I want to say, a couple weeks even later. It doesn't take long. And the color has evened back out. Their head is now the same color as the rest of their body. It's just really fun to watch. Let's see. Autoimmune conditions are complex, but refined flour is absolutely tied to it. And not because of the gluten, but because of all these chemicals, number one, and also because of the lack of true food-based nutrients, which you get by milling. All right, the C word is cancer. Again, that's one of those horsemen, and it's absolutely tied to the chemicals in our refined foods. Hopefully I'm not talking too fast. I have a lot to get through, and I'm trying not to over-talk. All right, benefits of milling your own flour. We have that whole grain advantage of the fiber, the minerals, the vitamins, and polyphenols, which are compounds that are known to promote health. And sometimes we know of them as antioxidants. Okay? Freshness. Would you eat an apple that you let sit on the shelf till it browned? Would you eat a banana that started to get soggy and gross? Other than maybe in banana bread, right? We don't eat flour that has oxidized and turned brown because it's not good for you. Okay? And this is really important because a lot of people will say, oh, it's great, I can mill my flour, now how long will it keep? That's totally the opposite of what we're going for here. The reason that they took all the good nutrients out of your flour and had to put the fake ones in is because those nutrients do not last on the shelf. Think about that for a minute. If your food has a long time expiration date, you don't have a whole lot of nutrients in there that your body's actually going to be able to use. They don't last. And this is why we need to mill fresh. Okay? The bran and the germ, it has all those vitamins in there. But that germ is a source of vitamin E. Does anyone remember back in the day, they used to have like wheat germ on the shelf? You could buy it at the store. You could add it to your breads and stuff like that. It's no longer on the shelves anymore. Do you know why? All right. I'm just going to assume everyone can still hear me. It's not on the shelves anymore because those fatty acids oxidized and it was cancer promoting. All right. So they took it off the shelf. Well, if you want to get the benefits of that wheat germ. Oh, good. Thanks for letting me know, Mel. If you want to get those benefits of the wheat germ, but you don't want to have the downside, right, of oxidized vitamins that can cause negative health effects, right? You have to mill fresh. Doesn't last that long fresh. Just like your fruits and your vegetables. All right. Other reasons to mill your own flour has to do with, oh, good. Thank you, Sandy. Fiber and your natural enzymes. There's protein in this flour, whereas it's been filtered out with your refined flour. We talked about essential fatty acids already, your vitamin E, right? Your immune function increases. How does that work? Well, we have insoluble fiber in our whole grains. And that insoluble fiber is responsible for so many things. Managing your bowels, whether you're constipated or you have loose stools, that insoluble fiber helps to balance it out both ways. It's really just miraculous. And that insoluble fiber, as it goes through your gut, helps to create more vitamins in your body than you can consume. So when people say, oh, wheat flour, it's not good for you, it doesn't have all those vitamins, it has a lot of vitamins, first of all. But second, that insoluble fiber that's going through your gut, that is creating the vitamins that you're looking for. Yeah, you wish you don't feel so lazy. Dude, I get it. Are you kidding? I felt exhausted. And when I started milling for Eli, my energy skyrocketed. I have this high, like 2 cups of coffee a day energy all day, but without the 2 cups of coffee. Why? Because I make sure that I get fresh milled whole grains every day. Okay? All right, improved digestion. That's what we were talking about. Sue Becker also has a talk called the Poopy Talk. So if you really want to be inspired, take a listen to her. She's fantastic. Moving on. Practical tips for busy folks. Isn't that what you all came here for? All right. So there are 3 different types of mills. We have our stone mills, our impact mills, and the manual ones. Now, a lot of times when people hear that I mill my own flour, they think that I am making life harder on purpose, right? Why would you want to do that? That's so hard. Yeah, Mel, I'm telling you, it's awesome. And when you look at the books that talk about cutting out gluten or wheat for Hashimoto's, the reason is because of the bromination and that it competes with iodine, right? And your thyroid hormone, your T3 and your T4, they are made up of iodine, right? The 3 iodine molecules for T3 and the 4 molecules for T4, okay? So if bromine in your food is knocking all the iodine off the receptors, then your body and your thyroid isn't going to be able to work the way that it needs to. And that also will tie in then to your trace minerals, right? Like selenium and your B2 and B3. Often with the Hashimoto's people, I tell them they don't need to supplement with the B2 and B3 if they're milling their flour fresh. You're going to get it in the bread. All right. So stone mills are actually, they've changed a lot over the years. Now you can get a countertop stone mill that's about, I would say, 6 inches square of a countertop footprint. And that would be the mock mill. It might be more like 8. I don't know, if I could show my webcam now instead of my screen, I would. But it's a very small countertop footprint. You turn on the mill, you put your grains in the top, and the flour comes right out the bottom in your bowl. Okay? The weight for your flour to be milled does not add extra time to making your recipes because you don't need to sit there and watch it mill. You can prepare your other ingredients while it's milling and no extra time has been taken. Okay? Impact mills. They are the Wonder Mill and the Nutrimill Classic. They will basically pulverize your grains into a fine flour. The downside of an impact mill is that you can't control the coarseness or the fineness of the grind. So your stone mills can be adjusted from just cracking grains to cornmeal or a very fine flour. That's one of the benefits of the stone mills. The other benefit that I prefer for a stone mill is that cleaning it out is pretty much just running rice through, and you only have to do that if your stones get glazed. Say you forgot that you couldn't do oily seeds in your in your grain mill. I did that once. The stones will get coated with all the fat, and the way to clean them is just to take some rice and run it through the mill. That's my kind of appliance, one that I don't have to take extra steps to clean. So, stone mill for me all the way. But some people prefer the impact mills, like the mock mill. I'm sorry, not the mock mill, like the Wonder Mill or the Nutrimill Classic, because you can mill large amounts of flour, and they have like a container that you can keep your flour in. So if you don't want to mill on demand, and you're okay with keeping your flour in those plastic containers, I'm not, then those would be a good option. The impact mills are cheaper than the stone mills. So there's a pro for the impact mills. And then we have our manual mills. And don't discount all the manual mills, because some of them can actually be powered by bicycle, by motor, and also by hand. And a lot of people will tell us how they're using like their grain maker or the country living grain mill, and how it's actually pretty easy to use. Some people love to do it with their children, so their children get some energy out and they enjoy watching the flour be milled. But by hand, those manual mills will take longer and add to your time. But hey, what great exercise. Okay. Cost is one of the huge reasons that I love milling my grains fresh. Okay, hear me out on this one. It costs me about $1.85 to make a loaf of organic whole grain bread. If I make it multigrain, like using barley and rye and spelt and, like Dave's Killer Bread, they have a whole bunch of different grains in there. It could actually cost me a little less, because some of those grains cost even less than wheat. How much do you pay for your dead bread? And I don't mean that like in a snotty way, but that's how I look at the bread now. I know that it's causing all these problems with people's health, mine included, and eating that bread is not worth it to me. I don't want to feel bad. I want to live my days with vibrance and have a high quality of life. And this is why I mill the bread. But in addition to saving a ton of money, especially if you're trying to buy those toxin-free breads that are in the store, right? That's a lot of money. You could save enough money for your grain mill in no time just by making your own bread. Not to mention the cookies and the muffins and pancakes and whatever. It's just so easy. And I don't have to buy the flour. Okay. Other reasons that it's cost effective is because you're full longer. Who in this group has had cream of wheat or other hot cereal from the store, how long did it keep you full? Cream of wheat was one of my favorite things growing up. But, oh, thank you, Sandy. Um, but I was starving maybe half an hour or an hour later. It tasted delicious. It filled me up for the short term, but it had nothing in there to sustain me for the long term. If you mill your own cream of wheat, it will keep you full for hours. I know that sounds so far-fetched, but it's not. I hear it over and over again. A slice of bread that can actually be filling and keep you full for hours. You don't need to eat a ton of it. Okay? Now, if you've seen my page on Facebook, uh, there are times where I bake so much because I'm trying to write a book for everybody. I will bake so much that they go, "Oh my gosh, do you ever stop eating bread?" And the reality is, I don't eat the majority of it. Cinnamon rolls go bad in our house if I don't make like just 6 of them because we're all full. But when you eat a cinnamon roll from pretty much anywhere else, you could just eat them all. They're so good, your blood sugar spikes, and then it drops, and then you crave more, and you want to just keep eating them, right? And with this, one is good, and then you're full. So it's very simple to just add in some roasted vegetables, or a little bit of meat, or higher quality ingredients otherwise. For me, getting high quality extra virgin olive oil was the best choice that I made. It was absolutely worth it in flavor and in regards to health. It's something that I can now afford to buy because everything else in my refrigerator I don't really need that much of. We don't buy junk food. I can't tell you the last time I bought chips or pretzels or cookies, cupcakes, anything like that. We just don't buy it. We don't crave it either. So that's kind of cool. It's just amazing how you're sated longer, you have less cravings. For my diabetics, if any of you are out there, I have this bread. It's in my rough draft of the book. It's my multigrain bread, and it has wheat, spelt, barley, rye, and and kamut. So 5 different grains. Well, when you add spelt, barley, and rye to your bread, it helps to keep your blood sugar steady longer. And that's my favorite blend for diabetics. All right, moving on. Let's see here. Tips for the busy folks. That's right. So you can make a big batch of bread dough. So let's say instead of making 1 loaf, because it's going to take the same amount of time to make a loaf of bread or 4 loaves of bread as it would to be making 1. So you could make 1 giant batch of bread dough and keep it in the refrigerator and every night bake something different. So basically what happens is you pull out the amount of dough that you want with wet hands, and then say maybe you sprinkle a little bit of cheese or sauce on top, and you have like breadsticks to go with your dinner. You could roll some out and make cinnamon rolls. You could, there's just, the possibilities are endless. You could make little dinner rolls for whatever meal you're having without having to make a new batch of bread every day. Does this make sense? And the longer that it lasts in the refrigerator, the more that the phytic acid is starting to break down. Totally different topic for another day. Phytic acid has actually been shown to be helpful for certain types of cancer, like colon. And so it may not be the bad guy that we really think that it is. And I guess that has more to do with looking at things from a whole foods perspective rather than a parts perspective. Nicholas, you said, can you buy that? What is it that you're wondering, can you buy it? Let's see here. So, I will often make a double batch of bread. I'll make bread with one half, cinnamon rolls with the other. I may make flatbread, pitas. Newsflash, flatbread is just bread dough and then you flatten it. There is no secret trick to that. And if you download, I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It took me a long time to learn. I learned so many different things over the years, but bread dough is bread dough. There's only two types. There's lean and a rich dough. Lean dough doesn't have extra fat or sugar in it, and rich dough does. So your cinnamon rolls, your donuts, your super soft Hawaiian rolls or whatever, they are the rich dough. They have extra fat and extra sugar in them. Your lean dough is your everyday bread. That's your daily bread. And in the old days, we're talking over 100 years ago, remember, the daily bread didn't have all that extra sugar and fat in it. It was pretty much just the flour, water, salt, yeast. Okay? Maybe just a little bit of sugar to help the yeast get a boost. But that extra sugar is not for you to eat, it's for the yeast. Okay. Base formulas. So in my free digital download, so you go to justmillet.com, you subscribe to my mailing list, and when you confirm your email, it will automatically send you this great getting started guide for fresh flour at home. Okay? It includes both types of bread formulas. You have pasta by hand or by extruder, and then you have pastries like cupcakes, muffins, cookies, pancakes, waffles, you name it. I got flatbread recipes in there 3 ways, including naan bread. I have crescent roll dough. You know, like the stuff that comes in the cans and everybody likes to, tee-hee. Like that, but actually good for you, okay? Using these base formulas or recipes that I have in this guide, you can get started wherever it is that you're at. Oh yeah, naan bread. It's in my free download. It's on the page near the back, and it's labeled flatbread 3 ways. So the secret to naan bread is instead of yeast, you use baking powder, and instead of water or milk, you use yogurt. That's it. Very quick and easy to make. You don't have to wait for it to rise because you're using baking powder. The base formulas are key for busy people who don't feel like they have a lot of time. You just mill a cup of flour, add a little bit of leavening and sweetener or whatever. Add whatever. I give a variety of mix-ins that you can add to these base recipes to give variety. So your loved ones who do miss the junk from the store, right? We may have a little bit of a store addiction going on, right? So there may be a point where everyone's craving that pizza from the place down the road. They're craving the chemicals. That's what they're craving. You got to give them some sweets along the way to help make this transition easier. All right, I've got cheat sheets in there because people will often say, okay, I got my mill, I got my grains, now what, right? And so we need to know how much grain to mill for a cup of flour, especially if you're in the United States, right? Because we go by cups in the United States. Well, I'm here to just blow your mind in every way. I don't use cups. anymore. And here is why. Okay? Um, First of all, I can never find them. If you got kids, they often will run away with your baking cups, playing with them and making their own things, and then you never see them again. So there's one reason, right? But the other reason is because when you bake by weight, all right, you can save on dishes. And I hate doing the dishes. I am what you would call the lazy homemaker, right? I had a feeling Dean would do it because, I mean, they are cousins after all. I think they're probably more alike than not. um, so when I started using a scale, I realized that I could use the tare or the zero out button. And so I measure my first ingredient into whatever bowl I'm using, and then I press the zero button, and then I measure the next ingredient. And the key is to just go slow. The other thing that I do using a scale is I always measure in grams, not ounces. And here is why. So grams are like measuring your food in pennies. Ounces are like measuring your food in quarters. Which one would you rather be off by? Pennies, right? So if I go over by a few grams when I'm pouring, it's no big deal. But if I go over by an ounce or two, that could be a very big deal and the recipe may not turn out. All right? So I try to make my recipes as user-friendly and adaptable as possible. If you are off by a little of this or a little of that, you leave something out or you add something in, it's still going to turn out. Might be even better than you thought it was. All right. Other things that are a little bit different with fresh milled flour is that it requires more liquid. Remember, we have this bran and germ in our flour. Excuse me, I'm in the one room in the house that I don't like to be in. I know, and had I not gotten sick that time, then I had a mill for you. So, due to the bran and the germ being in this flour, it's going to absorb more liquid than the flour from the store. Okay? The other thing that's different is that it takes longer for it to absorb that liquid. So when you're making a bread or muffins or pancakes or whatever, you might think, oh no, I put way too much flour in there. This is too wet. Do not add more flour. The best tip I can give you is to just give it a rest. Let it wait like 15, 20 minutes before deciding that you need to add more flour. And when you do, only add maybe a tablespoon or two at a time. Okay? Best advice I could give for newbies. All right. The next biggest question that I get from people is, well, how do I mill bread flour? Or how do I make all-purpose flour? Because my recipe says it uses all-purpose. Well, which grains do I use to get that? So, again, my digital download has a nice handy chart to tell you which grains are best in which categories, and you really can't go wrong following that chart, but I will go over it here for you just in case. Bread flour is made from hard wheat. The bread flour you get in the store is made from hard white wheat. The whole wheat flour you get at the store is made from hard white wheat that they have added a little bit of that bran and germ back in, which, if you're buying that at the store, we now know you wouldn't want to do that because it's going to go rancid. And you can taste that. Has anyone tried to make bread from all whole wheat flour before? Because I have. It tasted horrible. It was like cardboard. Ugh. Nobody ate it. I threw that loaf out. It was just terrible. Anyway, so hard wheat is what you're going to want to use for your bread flour. And hard wheat comes in, you'll see it listed as hard spring wheat, hard winter wheat, and it will have white or red. So the white wheat will look whiter, and the red wheat will look darker, both in the grain and in your baked goods. Okay? But if you are just starting out and you have very picky people who are used to that junk from the store, then you're going to want to start with hard white wheat. And once they get used to it, and they will, then you can try some hard red wheat. Maybe a little at a time. See how you like it as a mix before maybe one day just surprising everybody and just make one out of hard red. I just love the flavor of red fife. It's a hard red wheat. It is just so delicious. It's one of my favorites. But it looks brown when I make the bread, and a lot of people stick their nose up at that. Alright, next, pasta flour. You can make pasta out of hard wheat, but if you're looking to make the type of pasta that you get from the store, then you're going to want to use semolina. I am not good at pronouncing many things. And that is made from durum wheat. It's the hardest of all the grains. It is excellent added to your bread in small amounts. It makes the best pasta. No one will know that you milled it fresh and they're eating whole grain. I promise. Kamut, or Khorasan, is the ancient version of durum. It's the predecessor. If you are looking to use ancient grains, then you'd want to go with kamut over durum. But your pickier eaters may not like the kamut over the durum. Let's see. Now, the final, I would say, category for your flours would be pastries. So we have the bread, we have the pasta, which is the highest amount of protein. Your bread is just below that. And then we have our low protein grains that would make our pastry flour. And so that would be your soft wheat. There is soft white and soft red. Again, the flavor will be a little stronger for the soft red. And this is where all your gluten-free grains fall. So if you're gluten-free and you're not sure if you want to mill your flour, you could start by milling gluten-free grains. And if you later decide that you want to try milling other grains, that's just fine too. Okay? If you are celiac or have celiac, then you need to mill in a mill that is exclusively for gluten-free. But you can absolutely mill your own grains. I would actually venture to say that that's safer than buying the flours at the store. All right, let's see here. Then we have all-purpose. So many people say, oh, how do I mill all-purpose flour? This comes with a warning. You will get better baked goods by following the bread categories, right? These grain categories of pasta bread and pastries. So if you use baking powder for your recipe, instead of trying to mill all-purpose flour, try milling a pastry flour. Okay? If you use yeast in the recipe, go for a bread grain. And if you're making pasta, you can't go wrong with durum. I mean, it's just awesome. All right. But if you want to make all-purpose flour, it would be a mixture of your bread grains and your pastry grains, so hard and soft wheat. All right. Other toxin-free baking tips. We want to use stainless steel, cast iron that's not enameled, stoneware that's not glazed, glass. Our utensils could be wood, medical grade silicone, or stainless steel. Toxin-free baking ingredients, I will use organic whenever possible. Does it mean it's the best ever? Maybe, maybe not. But it's better than not. Even better, I always try to get from a farmer who is local that I know, someone who will let me walk onto their farm and see what things are like. I mean, that develops some trust. If they're not letting you see their processes, then you probably need to question what's going on, okay? I don't want you to stress, though, about how to get the best of everything, especially with all these workshops going on. It's very easy to get overwhelmed and think, gosh, where do I start? I need to get everything. That's so expensive, right? And it is. It's expensive to make all these changes at first, or especially all at once. You don't need to do it all at once. Do what you can within your own limits and try not to stress about it, because we all know stress is its own toxin. If you remain stressed long term, you are damaging your body just as much as putting the chemicals in. So give it a rest. Take a deep breath and say, what do I use the most? And what is the most value to me for my health? For us, adding bread back in was a doorway to being able to add in so many other things. Once we started milling this flour fresh, Eli has been able to have eggs, dairy, peanuts, even peanuts that were on the list. We were terrified. He has knocked out all of his allergies. Now, this is not medical advice. Let me be very clear. We did what was best for us in our situation, and with much care. So if you're going to do something like that, you need to work with your doctor. Don't just go, well, Dr. Carr did it, so I can do it too. Oh, I would hate it if you all of a sudden decided to try to add in things that you're allergic to without working with your doctor. Okay? Find a good doctor who will work with you. And if they don't know about fresh milled flour, get them educated. We need more doctors who are educated on the truth about fresh milled whole grain flour. One thing that I did not say, I did not put in this presentation, but I should have, is that you always want to buy your grains organic. And the reason for that is, remember how we talked about desiccation and the drying of the grains? You have a much better shot at not having glyphosate in your food when you're using organic grains versus non-organic. Same thing with your beans, with your coffee, and your tea. They're the most heavily sprayed with pesticides. And if you don't want to eat pesticides that aren't even labeled, then go organic for those items. Okay? Now, where are we at here? Alright, so on my website, justmill.com, I have an Intro to Milling Flour course. I go into much more detail. I have got tons of research, actual scientific research linked from my website in the course. I also have it on specific ingredients. If you click on the Getting Started link, you will be able to see some of that. All right. I have a conversion calculator on my website, which will help you to convert recipes from the white refined sugar to some healthier, maybe less refined options, such as sucanat, coconut sugar, date syrup, honey, and maple syrup. Those are the things that we use in our household, and that's why I created the calculator using those sweeteners. Because there's some recipes that I've made in the past that when I make them again, I'd like to convert, and I don't want to have to do the math over and over again. So that was a selfish creation, but you're welcome to enjoy it. Here are a bunch of articles and where they came from that help support what I taught here today, in case anyone wants to look into that. And then, like I said, most of your questions can be answered on my blog. You can subscribe to my blog, and as a thank you for doing that, I will send you my free guide to milling fresh flour with all the charts, everything you need to know about getting started, and some basic recipes no matter where you're starting. We have a Facebook community called Milling Fresh Flour with Lovely Belle and Dr. Mel. So Dr. Bell is me. Lovely Belle has this great site. It's lovelybellebakes.com. She is such a breath of fresh air, and I love how she looks at the process of baking. She has a YouTube channel, and she does all these videos, so you can basically just pause the videos and play, and you'll really get a great guide to walk you through how to make a lot of this stuff. I asked her to take over the group, and I also asked her to help write the book with me, because I think that she makes a lot of things that I don't, and vice versa. Again, she's just amazing. I think you'll all love her. All my social medias are at the top of my website in case you'd like to follow me on them. Oh, and if you do follow me, when I get to 5,000 followers on whichever platform hits it first, YouTube's looking like the closest, I'm doing giveaways. So I have a Zacme mixer and some bench scrapers and some other of my favorite kitchen tools that I'm going to be giving away once we hit 5,000 followers. And if you are subscribed on my blog when I hit 5,000 followers on social media, then you can win. Isn't that exciting? I think yes. All right. And in this post, when I opened up the live, I posted some links to everything that I mentioned here today. So if anybody has questions, I'm trying to think what else. Looking here. I don't think I saw, Nicholas didn't respond to me yet about, can I buy that? I don't know what he wanted to buy. Does anyone have questions for me in regards to why you would want to mill your flour, toxin-free baking, or cooking, anything specifically that I may not have covered? All right. If you do, feel free to leave those questions here or email me at mel@justmillit.com, and I would be happy to answer your questions. Oh, I know. One other cool thing is that there are also things called flakers. So for all you oatmeal lovers out there, you don't even have to buy oatmeal anymore once you get your grains. So you can use what they call a flaker, and you just roll your grains through the flaker. It's little rollers, and it flattens them out, and now you have fresh oatmeal. So cool, and you can do it for any grains. How long is fresh milled flour good for? Ooh, that's a toughie. So I've gotten grains from Janie's Mill, and that's janiesmill.com. They also sell 100% extraction flour, and as close to milling as they can. And I believe they say a month, but I wouldn't go that long. I would go maybe 15 days. I've used it on vacation for 10 days, and the results were so great that both of my parents agreed that they needed to start milling. Now, I'm not going to share their health issues and what resolved just in those days, and it took less than 7 days for them to notice. But I would have no problems keeping my flour for a week and baking with it. So if you want to get one of the impact mills and mill once a week, I would say that's fine. Your flour will keep even longer if you put it in the freezer, because we know that the colder the temperature, the slower the reactions, right? Yeah, it is great. This is just so much fun. So let's think about, what do we use flour in with our food, right? We use flour to make roux for soups and macaroni and cheese, like our bechamel sauce. You can mill the flour for that. You would use your soft grains or whatever grains you have on hand. Um, there are no changes to how you make your roux, except that you mill your flour as fine as you can get it. And then you mix it with your butter or whatever oil you're using in the pan, and you make roux. Now you can have creamy soups that are actually good for you. How cool is that, right? Um, oh, you know what, Mel? You were asking about how long is the flour good for, but we didn't discuss how long the bread is good for. So there are no chemicals in the bread, right? It's not going to last as long. It's a whole food. But one of the great things is, when you first start doing this and everybody starts to get addicted to the bread, um, and that sounds bad, but it is actually a good thing and it's temporary. Um, you'll get to a point where you're not eating the bread constantly, and because you're becoming sated, your nutritional deficiencies are starting to balance out. Okay? And so the bread doesn't last as long, or actually it lasts longer, and it starts to maybe not be as soft several days in. What I love to do is make a loaf of bread, eat it for the first couple days, and then cube it up and dehydrate it into croutons. And keep those croutons on hand for salads and soups or stuffing that's actually good for you. You can make stovetop stuffing in minutes. Just make croutons and make them with your fresh milled bread. I mean, this stuff can be so easy, so quick, so easy. You just have to know how to do it. Um, Now I feel like I'm rambling, but I could talk for days about this. I will add that when you first start eating the bread, everyone's gonna fart a lot. I say this in my bread classes, and everybody kind of laughs and they look a little worried, right? Um, but I explain it that all this fiber is starting to clean your intestines out, right? And all the junk that gets stuck along the walls, that's what the fiber's for. It's like this little tiny brooms going through and sweeping everything out. And so all that toxic sludge is going to smell and you're going to get gassy. Um, but as you continue to eat this bread and don't eat the dead bread, your body's going to clean itself out, and then you don't have that problem anymore. And at first, you might think, the bread was just okay. And I say, yeah, I feel you there. Keep eating it. And so you keep eating the bread, have another slice the next day, and another slice for lunch, another slice at dinner. And then all of a sudden you start to crave this bread. And it's funny, because people will say, it's okay. And then they go, oh my goodness, I couldn't stop eating it. I ate like the whole loaf of bread. And is that bad? And I say, no, it's not bad. Your body knows that there's nutrients in there, right? And your brain stem is responsible for satiety. So if you're eating food that doesn't have a high nutritional density, you're going to be hungry, right? For more. But the body recognizes the nutrition in this bread, and it just craves it. It's like, oh, I've been waiting for you. Where have you been all my life? And you just, you eat and eat and eat. And that's fine. Go for it. It doesn't last long. And then you're all caught up and you're like, oh, okay, a slice is good. I don't need a lot, right? And your body will start to then be able to just go, oh, I only need a little. I already got all my nutrients, thanks. Does that make sense? Anyway, I know I just rambled on. I planned on this only being like 15 minutes, and here we are at an hour and 15 minutes. So I'm going to end. Like I said, if anybody has any questions or whatever, feel free to ask them in the comments or reach out an email or in the group Mill and Fresh Flour with Lovely Belle and Dr. Mel. Have a great night. Thanks.